Good morning, all, or I guess happy lunchtime for me and others of you here in the future. And welcome to Kal-bardr's Corner for this episode of Coffee with Cal. I'm Baron Kal-bardr Gellir, Commanding the Meridian Cross, Commanding the Argent Comet, Commanding the Compostela, Commanding the Palmer's Lantern, Defender of the West, and Reaper. Coming to you live from the Shire of Vulpine Reach, on the not too far from dead center of the Kingdom of Meridians. Today, I am flying solo. I've got some opinions, some wisdom, and probably a bit of a rant to share with you, but we'll see what happens. This may go back to the founding of this show and the what grinds my gears. Hopefully it's useful. But since today's show is coffee themed, we have to first talk about our beans. Also, if I look a little weary, we had an event yesterday here in Vulpine Reach, the Tourney of the Foxes, and it was a whole day of me playing games and being out in the heat and things, so I'm a little tired, I won't lie. Which is fortunate that today's coffee is Dark Magic from Green Mountain. It is dark, it is fabulous, it is highly caffeinated, and I love it. So, yum. And of course, out of my awesome cup that Bronco totally didn't make, he did make it, he won't admit it, but this is an awesome mug, I love it. I actually brought this mug with me from my house to here because I wanted this mug because I love it so much. So, anywho, so as we get into the show proper, and introductions are out of the way, and we've talked about our coffee a little bit, make sure to introduce yourself in the comments. Say hi. Let me know you're out there watching. I'll say it in the comments as well. Hi, all. So one of the problems we do in the show solos is I don't have time while other person's talking to type in the comments, and I forget about that. So if you notice that on shows with me by myself, it's fine. Let me know if you're out there. Let me know who you are, where you're watching from, so that I can say hi to you properly. And if you have any questions during the show or comments to add to the discussion, I'd love to have them. This is a sort of not a weird topic per se, but it's one that I think is pivotal to the SCA, who we are in the SCA. So creative anachronisms. Okay. We are the society of creative anachronisms, right? Quick definitions here. So creative, obviously making things, creating things, coming up with some new ideas, whatever. Anachronism is something out of time. So for us in the SCA, in a medieval organization, everything we do is an anachronism in the current time, right? But also our anachronisms fall into things like wearing glasses. They didn't have those, at least the glasses we have, or wearing sunglasses, modern safety gear. Our helmets that we wear on the fighting field have to have extra safety precautions so that we don't get stabbed in the eye. These are anachronisms, right? These are things that are out of time and place for the personas or cultures we're trying to involve ourselves in. But they're necessary for us not to die. Right? I think those are the easy ones for me. Also, can people hear me? Nobody's commenting yet. That's why I ask. Hold on. Everyone says good, so I'll go good. All right, just making sure. You guys are all quiet this morning. So I think that's the first easy one for me when you're looking at anachronisms in the SCA. Oh, cool. Comments are coming in now. Apparently I had to send one out to get comments coming in. So we look at the archery field. We see things. We have modern things on our arrows, whether they be the nocks or different tips, things like that. We're not using standard broadhead tips. We're not using sort of the hunting tips of the day. We're not just shaving on a stick and hoping it flies right. We're also using modern targets a lot of times. We're using styrofoam or the squishy sort of rubbery foam. We're using regulation faces. These are anachronisms, right? These are anachronisms we just sort of have all accepted. We hold events in modern buildings, right? We use lights. We use kitchens. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people who do period cooking. There are people who do fully immersed, no lights, no early period life, sort of enchanted ground spaces, and that's amazing. By the way, for those people who do that and commit to that level of recreation, I love it. I think there's a place for it. But in our sort of more modern society, we have the internet, we have technology, we have computers, we have these other like tools to use, so we don't have to do everything by the period methods, especially if we're not doing it for an ANS project, right? Let me sort of separate the two, right? If you're doing an ANS project and you're trying to recreate some period widget, period bauble, period piece of music, whatever, in my opinion, you should do that as close to period as possible, as much as you are capable. I think at least that's the goal. You want to move towards that thing to see what they did, because the things we can do with a modern hammer, with a modern guitar, with a modern piece of tool are different than they would have done with the bits and period, right? I think looking at those, having the correct tool allows you to get a more correct or more accurate or more period appropriate thing out of it, because you're seeing what it does, right? And I've seen some people have done ANS projects that have sort of went down that route of starting with modern tools and then adding a period tool, adding a period material. My wife, is one of her things she's working on is the Thorsberg trousers. And she first made a pair of pants, so she has the pattern correct, but she used modern threads, she used a sewing machine, she sort of did that, but the patterning was right, so her research was around how this was constructed. So her next step is getting the correct wool, getting the correct thread, using bone needles or brass needles or whatever, using brass pins, and walking down that, because it will change the function of the garment in some ways, because you can't achieve certain effects by hand that you would have with a sewing machine, or sort of vice versa. So I think that's interesting. I think that really plays into what we look at as anachronisms, right? The things we use that are out of period. And I'm glad we have flushing potties. I'm glad we have porta potties. I'm glad we have toilet paper. I'm glad we have glasses. I think these things are important for what we do, because it makes our lives easier and makes this hobby fun. All right. So this rant came to me not because of that. It came to me because of some things I do that I was talking to some friends about it at an event or something, and I realized that I have an opinion on doing things anachronistically that is maybe not as popular, at least not in my kingdom, or not where I'm at, or it's people don't think they can do it, right? So we've done some shows in the past on authenticity and looking at ANS as perfect and doing things like that. And our goal, obviously, as medieval recreators, is to recreate the Middle Ages, or pre-1600 time period, for those of us who are outside of the Middle Ages, as accurately as possible, right? So we want our garb to be accurate. We want our weapons to be accurate. We want our ANS projects to be accurate. We want them to be accurate. But also we have to remember, we are living in a modern society. So the Kingdom of Meridies, the Kingdom of Locock, the Kingdom of the West, the Kingdom of Drachenwald, the Kingdom of Atlantia, these places do not exist in period. There is zero precedence for those places. There's zero precedence for their colors. There's zero precedence for their names. Now, some of them are taken from bits and pieces of history, right? But the Kingdom of Locock did not just exist in period. The Kingdom of Meridies did not just exist anywhere in period. We're pulling, we're not just recreating England here, right? Some of us are recreating English archers, or English, footmen, or Scythian horsemen. But the whole of what we do does not exist. So a lot of the structures we've adapted and we've created is spawned from the fact that we are fantasy role-playing. I'm going to let that sink in for a second, because I know people hate that word. I come from a LARP background. I've done LARPing, both Boffer style and rock, paper, scissors style in the Vampire World, for those of you who are old school golf kids. I think we're a LARP, right? So we are role-playing characters that we've made up within a loose framework that we've been given. So you have sort of two. It's a spectrum. There's two ends of the spectrum. You have your day one basic T tunic that has zero historical presence. It's literally just like a scrub top with some fancy trim on it, maybe. That at least they're not wearing t-shirt, right? A t-shirt and sweatpants with like writing on it. That's day one. And then you've got your day 100. That's your fully accurate, hand sewn. Every piece of garb has an excellent example for it. Hat, underwear, like to the 9th enchanted ground level, right? That's your spectrum. I think all of us fall somewhere in that. But in that spectrum, right, you don't have to do the 100. Like the goal is not to get to 100%, in my opinion. If you're doing an ANS project, yeah, that's your goal. 100% is your ANS project. If you're doing a full body recreation, that's your goal. So the thing I've done, and sort of what I want to talk about today, is my goal is to look as if I could have fit into the time period. But I've also adapted my garb, and I've adapted my persona, and I've adapted my things I do to who Kal-bardr is and has become within the SCA, right? So I look at it as if I started day one as, okay, I am Kal-bardr. I have my horseman's gear on from the Scythian steppes, and I showed up here in Meridian, right? Whatever your backstory is how you got to, right? Because we are not living in Russia or England or ancient Cambodia. We are living in modern day, like wherever you are. Like pick your location. That's where you're living. So I'm in Alabama, in Tennessee currently, but I'm in Tennessee in the middle of Meridians, and I've adapted to Meridians culture. Right? So I've taken my garb and I've taken things that I do and adapted based on what we do. Question is, why does the ANS have to be the day 100? Why cannot be the ANS show skill not the day 100? Yeah, let me clarify this. Day 100 is your goal, is sort of what you're moving towards, right? I'm not saying that is what you're. Don't show it till you get day 100. But if most people who are doing ANS, and this may be my opinion, right, is you are moving towards the period recreation, right? That day 100. So I'm doing, if I do a day 1 to day 100 scale, that's probably a terrible way to scale this, but it's what came into my head. That's what I'm doing. That day 100 fully period, fully, as if somebody made it in the pick your medieval period time. That's your goal, right? So if I'm doing an ANS project that is a recreation of a thing, my ultimate goal is to have it be fully recreated in that time period. Now, there's something we can't do that with, right? We cannot fully recreate certain bits and pieces, and we're having these modern tools because that's what we have available. But I know some people, Master Brune, who recently did a crossbow at Pennsic, and I think it won the Pennsic ANS champion thing for our kingdom, which is really cool, by the way. He actually not only made the period crossbow, he remade the tools to then make the period crossbow. So it was like he made the crossbow initially, and then sort of the next step was me remake the tools. So it was a multiple step process for him, which, and this is a whole nother argument that I think I'm going to make a whole other show, is the idea of seed to shirt does not exist. It did not exist in period. People who made cloth did not also sew cloth. People who sewed cloth did not also dye cloth. People who dyed cloth did not also make trim. People who made trim did not also paint pictures. Those things did not exist together. Each of those were specialized things. That's a whole show in itself. So thank you for that question. You're correct. Does not have to be the goal. That is the eventual sort of what you're walking towards, in my opinion. Thank you for that question. But in that, I think in that sort of tangents back to my topic of, if you're doing an ANS project, right, that's the goal. But if you're not, there's things we can do with our garb, with our personas, that adapts our who we are as people, right? So and this came up. Okay, so this came up yesterday. So heraldry. Heraldry is a great example of this for me. I'm a herald. I'm a herald nerd. Our heraldry system in the SCA is very 14th century and later European based, right? Now, other cultures had heraldry. Other cultures used heraldry. And if we can even look back to what I can imagine as the Paleolithic, Stone Age, the first people, right? If you have 10 dudes out in a hunting party and they meet 10 other dudes and have some fight, and I'm using dudes as the gender neutral version of dudes, by the way, whoever your fighters were. There are probably something on those people that denote they're from tribe A and not from tribe B, right? It's a color flag on their spear. It's a color dang on their spear. It's a certain loincloth they're wearing. It's a blue thing on their head, whatever. It's a face paint that matches. That, in its simplest terms, is heraldry, right? The purpose of heraldry is to denote your enemy on the battlefield. That's it. That's what it's for, right? It is a target recognition per system. So then the SCA, our heraldry system is based around those 14th century European ideals. And I appreciate the SCA has recently, in the last few years, started loosening its rules and adapting to non-European cultures, to earlier period cultures, and sort of allowing us to do more things with it. And that's awesome. And I think we should do more of that. There was a recent ruling by the BOD that we can now start allowing stuff from non-written cultures, which is huge for me, by the way, as coming from someone from looking at the Scythian, Saka, the barbarian tribes. They didn't write things. They didn't have a written language. So everything I have is secondhand. So having that as a sort of conjecture is a really cool basis for that. And I'm curious how it's going to affect the heraldry community. That's a whole thing. I'm a little excited about it. I won't lie. I'm saying I'm not the only one. It's a good thing, right? I think there's some concerns I have of how that's going to happen, but I love that we have the option to start looking at that now, right? Neither here nor there. So heraldry is the thing. So I got a conversation with Runa the other day about a thing she's making for someone, and I don't want to go into the details because I don't want to ruin the surprise. But the idea was, so I'll use myself as the example here. It's the same sort of parallel. Myself in period wouldn't have used heraldry, right? They didn't hunt like that. They didn't have organized flag groups. There's no like example of that. So I have to, when I'm looking at who Kal-bardr is in the modern day SCA, in the modern day Meridiers, how would I do that in keeping with the theme and sort of the ideals of Scythia and the Scythian people? So, I adapt my trim. I adapt my flags. I put a spear pendant on my spear, right? Because I also wouldn't be using that kind of spear. I wouldn't be using a 9-foot spear in a line in combat. It's not how I would have fought. I don't carry a shield anymore. I carry a short spear and a sword because it's more akin to my thing, more akin to what I would do. But that also means I don't have anywhere to put my heraldry on my spear because there is no thing there. So I have to wear it other ways. I have to wear it on my belt. I have to wear it on, in my clothing. I have to wear it other places. That's okay, right? My tent is not what I would be using in period. If I had a tent, it would be something more like a yurt. I'm not setting a yurt up. It's too hard, too much work, right? I have I don't even know if it's period tent because it was the one I could afford. But it looks period. I can put flags on it, right? I think that's the anachronism that I look at in my garb. My setup is, this is not 100% correct for Kal-bardr in period, but it is correct for Kal-bardr today. That's my anachronism, right? That's my creative anachronism, is I'm finding ways to adapt to the SC culture, what I do. A great example that I've done, there are two actually. So I'm a hat guy. Anybody who knows me, who's seen me at events, sees me in my hats. It's sort of become my signature thing, which I love. I love hats, and the Scythian hat has a very unique shape. And there's a couple of them, so anybody who's out there who's a Scythian connoisseur, I'm wearing very like one particular kind of hat from Scythia, and it's based on the Frisian cap, or the Frisian cap based on it rather. And I think that's a whole rant. But I've done two things with mine. I'm sticking to the concept and the shape, but I'm changing the colors. I'm adapting it to what I do. So I am the Minister of Whimsy for the Barony of Southdowns. Is an unofficial official title that the Baron and Baroness gave me because of my gaming thing I do, and they wanted more of that at events. And when I was given that role, I said, okay, I need a hat for this. I could put together some sort of jester's cap. Like that was my goal, was a jester's cap. So I worked with my wife, and we built it's a blue and black party colored hat, right? Again, so that's right there is an anachronism for my period. They wouldn't have had party, they wouldn't have done party colors, they probably wouldn't have done blue and black. And instead of having metal cresting on top, a bird, an animal, something, it's got bells on it, on the crest, and bells on the dangles. So it looks like, so it has a jingle like a jester's cap would, but it's very obviously not, and it has like white fancy trimming on it that's like from the cosplay section of Joanne Fabrics, right? So way anachronistic, but when I wear it with my regular, Scythian garb, it doesn't look off. And that's, I think, my key is, does this look like it could have been with some adjustments, right? So obviously they didn't have those kinds of bells, maybe. They didn't have that kind of trim. They maybe not have had those colors. I'm not a dye expert. That's a whole rant my wife would go on probably. But the concept is I'm sticking to my roots of what I want the hat shape to be, but I'm adjusting what I need to do. So another hat I did is I am also a pilgrim. So I was given an award to the Order of the Compostela, which here in Meridies is the award for travel. And I was given it for my digital travels via these shows and other channels I've helped on and things we've done through KK Productions. And I've recently started actually traveling. And I've my bag. So I have a messenger bag that I wear. Again, another whole anachronism, right? The messenger bag, maybe not, but the patches I'm putting on it are. So I'm putting pilgrims patches on it from every kingdom I visit. So I have the poppies bag from every kingdom. I have 4 currently: Meridies, Glenalvin, Ontir, and Artemisia. Not in that order. Artemisia is not Ontir. In this year, I'll travel to 4 more kingdoms in the next 3 months. So, by the way, hi, if you're at events, come see me. I'll be at a lot of them. But I realized I needed a pilgrim's hat. I saw people wearing these sort of later period, like 14th, 15th century pilgrim's hats with all the little pilgrim's badges on it. I was like, oh, that's a cool thing, right? I should do something like that. But I don't want to wear a bicocket. That's not period for me. It's not sort of accurate to my culture. Can I make a Scythian hat that fits my Meridian roots, my Meridian culture, but also maybe put some of these things I have that are gifts I've gotten, badges I've won, Gulf Wars medallions, things like that on it? The answer is yes. So I took that exact same hat shape, black on the outside, white on the inside, and by I mean my wife did this. I love my wife; she's the best seamstress ever. And then we took things that I had been gifted by the crowns I've worked with, or like my Gulf Wars, my last Gulf Wars medallions on there. I bought some Pilgrim's medals at Ontario West, and we attached them to this hat, and they become. I got a pronoun pin on it. I'm getting a Black Lives Matter one. One of the ones like Logan has, because I think that's just a badass looking badge, but also it's something that's important to me as a person. I think adding those to my hat, and that's become my Pilgrim's hat. I'll add to it over the next few years here, and when that one fills up, I'll probably make another one or get her to make another one. But that, because I am an SCA pilgrim, I'm a Meridian pilgrim, but stuck to my roots. Like it's a creative anachronism, right? They would have never done that. That's weight and decoration and things that they probably wouldn't have cared about because they were busy. They were doing stuff. They were living their lives, right? They were trading things. They wouldn't have necessarily kept their wealth there. Or if they did, it was for a purpose, right? And it's cool because I can also use that now as trade items. If I want to gamble something off my hat, cool as that, right? The games I play We don't know if they played those in my period. They played them in some period. They're period accurate games, but some of them are not. Like Ship Captain Crew. Maybe play Ship Captain Crew with me. That's an SCA-ism. It's an SCA game that they could have played in period because they had dice. We have no recollection. We have no record of them playing. Let's see. All right. SCA anachronism needs to be more accepting for inclusion. I agree. So I think that's my opinion as well. But especially because of the non-Western cultures, and so we are trying to adapt non-Western, non-European, non-late period, non-Middle Ages cultures to a Middle Ages European structure. Right, the SCA from its 57 years ago was built around the ideals of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Camelot and the knights and ladies of story. That's what the SCA is, right? The feasts we go to, the tournaments we hold, the wars we hold, the style of combat we hold, that's all very, very late period. That is not accurate for all of the cultures we look at, all right? They have similar things. Like I am not an expert on all the cultures of the world. There may be similarities, but our culture is based off Europe. Our SCA culture is based off Europe. So we are now starting to accept and starting to adapt and starting to allow, and I'm allow, right? Is a stupid word, but that's true. These other cultures to become part of that, right? And it's one of the reasons that I moved into doing Scythian stuff is because as someone who is very outspoken, very sort of big in the SCA, I am not a peer. I'm not somebody that's terribly important within the structure of our SCA, but I have a platform. I moved in doing Scythian because it's something that I really liked. And it allows me to pull a non-European culture into our current modern day. And I think that's what this talk for me is about, is the, how do you do that? So I referenced earlier about the gift that Runa was making. So the conversation we had was, how do you adapt heraldry? Right, that was the conversation. And the person, the argument was, well, my culture wouldn't have done that. My culture wouldn't use heraldry. So I don't need it. I don't want a spear flag. I don't want a pennant. I don't want a thing. I don't want to use heraldry because my culture wouldn't have done it. And you're correct. So my culture wouldn't have had titles like that. So my culture had, Scythian culture used like 3 different titles. They had kings and high kings. That's about it. They didn't have barons or counts or dukes or lords or ladies. They had the king. They had 3 kings. There was 3 kings of Scythia. One was in charge, and there were 2 sort of lesser kings. And then they had some tribal leaders for the various areas. That was sort of the overarching structure of the Scythian culture. And when I'm king of a kingdom, I may use some appropriate title for that. But also, I'm not a baron of Scythia. I'm not a baron of England. I'm not a baron of insert thing that makes a different title more appropriate. I'm a baron of Artemisia in living in Meridius. Right? That's where I got my title from. I didn't get my title from Scythia. From the Scythian culture. I say Scythia as if it's a place. It's not a place, by the way. It's a big step, people. But Scythia is not a country. So looking at things like heraldry, like titles, right? Just because your culture, your persona wouldn't have used that title, the crown and king of that culture didn't give you that title. You earned that title here. You are a master of some art. You are a knight of our field. You're a knight of the kingdom. You are a king of this kingdom. I think that's important to remember when you're looking at those things. When you're looking at the heraldry, yeah, you're right. Your culture wouldn't use it, but we do. We in the SK use heraldry. We register names, and it's for our modern day making sure we're having some sort of record keeping of what people are doing, right? Because if you use a blue bear, and 100 other people use that same blue bear, everybody's using blue bears, there's a problem. We're now doing some conflicting things of whose thing is this, right? Because the purpose of heraldry is denoting your enemy on the battlefield, but also marking your stuff so you don't lose it. And so if you do lose it, you know who it gets back to. I make sure on my phone I've got a picture of my heraldry as my background, so that people could find me later if they see my gold wagon wheel on my background on my phone if I lose my phone at an event. Or at the very least, I can go, oh, hey, that's my phone. And I go, yeah, it's got my heraldry in the background. Look, here's my heraldry. And show them my flags or something, to match the phone to me. I think that's my argument. That's my rant. And so I guess it irritates me. And this is sort of where the rant comes in. It irritates me when people do that, especially people who are peers of the realm, who are sitting crowns, sitting nobles, that have earned these titles and earned the right to use XYZ honorifics or should be carrying these heraldry, and they don't do it because of their persona. I think that is the exact opposite of the word creative anachronism. That is, if that's the level of real you want to be in, that's other groups do that, right? Other organizations do that. And also, okay, I'm going to contradict myself here. If that's what you want to do, rock it. Do your thing, man. People show up, be awesome, put on your gear, and let's hang out and have a drink and fight some. Cool, good. I'm never going to tell you this. I'm never going to tell you can't do it. But don't argue against it just because your culture wouldn't have done it, and don't make it harder for other people because your culture wouldn't have done it. I think that's my irritation is when you make it harder for other people. Yeah. Rune is convinced if Runefried had access to glitter, she would absolutely bathe in it. Yeah. Right. So glitter is a great example. It is the herpes of the craft world. Please, God, don't get around me. But, yeah, that culture wouldn't have had glitter. But if someone gives her something with glitter on it as a gift, or a bottle of glitter as a gift, she damn well is going to use it in her garb because it fits the culture of today. Somebody gave Varuna that gift, that bead, that dangle, so she can adapt it to her thing. Lady Kisa has taken all of our site tokens over the years, or some of my older ones, mine and Steve's older ones, and some ones we've gotten the last couple of years here, and she's adapting them and making them into festoons for her. Not period accurate, but the concept is, right? Because that's what they would have done. The idea of festoons or the belly dance scarves or things that were people who were their monocultures with jingles and coin stuff on them, the Vikings wearing all their gear, they wore their wealth. And part of it was sort of they were walking examples of what they had done. And it was lineage things, right? So her taking all these site tokens over the last few years and adapting them into her garb is conceptually period accurate, because it's what they would have done if you took somebody from Norse culture and dropped them into today and said, okay, adapt. They would have adapted. They would have used their roots, but applied their current day to it, right? Which is what we need to do. I'm not saying we need to adapt technology into our stuff, right? But I'm also not mad when somebody has a Bluetooth speaker in a fancy wooden box, right? That's adapting technology to ourselves. I like having the music around because we don't have the spare money to pay minstrels to sit around and play music for us all day, right? We all want to hang, we do occasionally do that, but we have ways to adapt that ambiance without having to pay 5 people to sit there all day. Yes. SCA-isms, right? Our ring belts is a great example of this. Ring belts are not period at all. So if you have a belt that's more accurate to your persona, awesome. I appreciate you. I'm working on one for myself. I have my fighting belt that's my protege belt, but I still wear my protege belt 90% of the time because it is the belt I was given by my peer to show our relationship. And that's a thing that's modern to me. It's not like again, they wouldn't have that relationship didn't exist as far as we know in period 4 Scythian culture. They didn't have there was probably some sort of apprenticeship system, but they didn't have a protege pelican. Things like this. So trying to do that now, I do it the way that makes sense to this culture and what my peer wants to do. Now, I have adapted some of her heraldry into mine. So, like, I use snakes now in some of the stuff I do because that's my peer's heraldry, and I have a snake on my belt. And when I have one day I'm a pelican and I have my own proteges, I will adapt similar bits of that, and I'll give them something that is reminiscent of my culture. And I'll pass that along. But I'm also going to pass along parts of my peer to them, right? So the snakes will be involved. There'll be a similar belt style. Like, that's what we're going to do. But I'm also not going to be mad if they want to adjust the belt to fit their culture, right? Because I think everybody gets to make that decision for themselves. This is a whole other bit of this, right? So Runa and I have actually done a show on visible disabilities and sort of, I think disabilities in the SCA is a whole topic as well. But yeah, you're right. Anachronisms, like I mentioned glasses earlier. Glasses, modern shoes, walkers, the electric scooters, knee scooters, casts, 1,000 things for disabilities in certain disabilities. Dogs, service dogs, service animals. I saw a service parrot at an event. That was a funny one. All of that is things that are anachronistic, right? Yeah, they had dogs in period. Yeah, they had they had some form of crutch. They had some form of cast. They had some form of glasses in the later periods and things. And but also they just killed those people. Those people just died. They just didn't survive because they couldn't survive, right? We appreciate our people with disabilities. We don't want to just kill them. So I have no problem with them doing that. But also, if you have the time and effort and sort of ability, adapt your thing. So, and this is a silly example, but seeing the people who have the electric scooters, like the little moped-looking scooter things, putting horse heads on them and putting like a unicorn head on them, putting some sort of or chariot, or like if you have a wheelchair, putting like chariot decorations on it, right? I think that allows you to get past that person's obviously using a modern day wheelchair or a modern day scooter and go, oh, look, they're riding a horse. That's funny. Cool. I got that. That person's riding a horse around. They're like, they've got a pony, or they're pulling that kid around in a chariot. That to me, whereas it's a silly little thing, allows me to sort of fall back into the mindset of the medieval period, Middle Ages, right? We look at like chessboards, right? Could I go to Walmart right now and buy a modern chessboard and play chess at an event? Because chess is a period game, right? There's no argument there. But the plastic pieces from Milton Bradley are not. Is that better than nothing? Yes. But I also make a little bit of extra effort and find wooden pieces and a slightly weathered wooden board, maybe a little more crudely drawn that fits my persona. So Lady Kisa recently made, with some assistance from me, very little, made me some nicer game boards for some of the games I'm playing. But they're not period for my culture. They're made out of 3/4 inch plywood. They're large. They're heraldically painted with my heraldry colors on it. But they fit the Middle Ages culture, and I've adapted games that I'm trying to teach and help other people play into the Middle Ages, so they don't look off. They don't look out of place now, and they look like they're adding to the ambiance, right? That's sort of the creativity that falls into that, and they're definitely anachronistic, both for me and for the Middle Ages. But they look like they could have existed. Like they at least fit into the mold. Yeah, there's so much coffee in this cup. Second problem when I do these shows by myself is I talk too much and drink too little coffee. I'll scroll back the comments real quick. Oh yeah. So Sherman said this earlier. I think this is a great one. Our ancestors, right? So the cultures we're portraying adapted to the whims of the crown. So if we look at a lot of culture shifts within the SCA, if we have a Norse crown or an Asian crown or a Mongolian crown or a South American crown, whatever, the culture of the kingdom shifts to adapt to that crown, which is a very period thing to happen because the person with the biggest hat gets to sort of set the rules. And that fits our SCA culture as well, is that we have the person with the biggest hat sets our rules, and they're sort of setting the guidelines. Now, not everybody follows that. You always have your hipsters. You always have your people who are off brand because they can't afford it, or they don't like it, or they don't like that person. And that's perfectly fine, right? So, but if there's some, like when you have people who do like a Norse reign or a Norman reign or whatever, a handful of people will adapt to them and work with them on their reign so that they have a group that looks like them. I know Princess Jack and Prince Axel from Glenalbin are doing the exact opposite. They're not changing their personas, and they're also not adapting to each other's personas to show differences. Like they're doing this intentionally to show differences in adapting that. So that right there is an anachronism. There are two cultures adapting from two different places, right? Axel's very, sort of Norse Viking stuff. Jack's very Ottoman, Turkish, Persian. Whereas, those two people could have met. They could have been together. There's that culture. I'm sure there's some story there that could make sense. But one or the other probably would have changed depending on which country they were in, which country they were ruling in, right? They were actually the prince and princess of some place. They would have adapted. So the fact that they're not doing that, I think, is really interesting and plays into that anachronism of what we are doing. And it's important to show that. I think it's important to show that you don't have to do that. You don't have to change based on the thing. Or you can if you want to, right? The more Eastern countries, or Eastern kingdoms, rather, so East Atlantia, Meridies, Glenalbin, Trimaris, this side of the world, we have very specific personas. Like our personas are much more defined. And that argument of, well, this is what my persona would do, comes up a lot more. In the West, turn for that, they do less of that. They have garb that's based on a culture, right? They have dress that's based on a culture. They do certain things based on a culture. But it's much more, what do I feel like, right? Now, there's always some adaptation here in Meridies. Everybody jokes about that Meridies goes Roman in the summer because it's bloody hot here. I was wearing long sleeves yesterday and was fucking miserable for it, but it's what I'm comfortable, like physically comfortable in. So also I don't have enough sleeveless tunics yet to show off my sweet tats. And so like on Sophia in the comments here, they dress for the weather, right? So we do that as well, but all right, they don't look at personas hardly at all. Right? They dress for whatever's comfortable that day, whatever happened to make, or whatever struck their fancy. Which is really funny to me, considering that's where the SCA came from, and we here in the South and other kingdoms are a little more staunch about our persona play. I appreciate that they're picking it up as a silly role play versus us are being a little more accurate about it. I think it's funny to me. Not to talk about Westy friends, but it's really like they're sort of setting an example. So, that's the thing, right? So, my challenge to you, and I think I'm gonna end it here, so I can. I have to go. I'm going off today to build armor, so I'm excited to get out the door and get on the road. I've got to go drive in about an hour and a half to Sir Volric's house, which anybody who saw my trip to Wantier West, Viscount 3 was in the car. It's his wife. Going out to his house today to work on my new Scythian helmet, so that I can add it to my new Scythian breast body kit that I'm working on, so I can have it for Great Western. So, but my challenge to all of you is this: sit down with your culture in your head. Sit down with the SCA. Think, okay, I am Baron Kal-bardr. How would Baron Kal-bardr, or how would Kal-bardr, right? Let's go back. How would Kal-bardr from, which by the way, Kal-bardr is a very Norse name that I've just kept because it's the name I'm known as. It is not a Scythian name at all. Let's be clear here. That's a whole anachronism in itself. How would this person from time period and place adapt if they were dropped into today, into this modern SCA? Right. So if they were here, if they got a Meridian Cross, if they got a Defender of the West, if they got a Insert Your Kingdom Award, how would they display that? If they got a title, they got an AOA, they got a court bearing, if they won a tournament, how would they display that? How would they use that? Right? Because so when people traveled, they didn't change their titles. They used titles from where they were. So when I travel out of kingdom, I keep my current titles. I keep my current headdress. I keep my current things, even if it's not appropriate for that kingdom, because I am not from those places. When I went to Artemisia before I had my court barony, I wore my AOA, even though Artemisia doesn't, because I had it from another kingdom. So consider that. Consider what you would do. And then consider what you in the SCA, who you are. If you're a person who does games, if you're a jester, if you're a seamstress, if you're a painter, how can you adapt your hobby within our hobby to your garb, to your thing, and to your culture, right? Even if it's not something your culture would have done, if your culture that you personify mostly, whether it's through your garb or through your persona, didn't do the thing you do, cool, okay. Think about it. How can you adapt it? How can you make it be more like what they did? So SCA combat, great example for me. I've talked about this before. First of all, we wouldn't have fought like that. But if we did, how would we have done that? Right? That's the question I ask. So consider that. Let's see. All these things fit into the new ANS category of SCA life, not necessarily recreation of period items, but things essentially SCA centric. Correct. I think this is a great example. Thank you for that, Cyprian. So SCA life is a thing, right? And this is something we can start doing more of. I think that is a ANS category is great, and I appreciate that being an ANS category. But also just as a cultural ideal, SCA life is a thing. The SCA has a culture of its own. Meridiace has a culture. The West Kingdom has a culture. Lokak has a culture. Those cultures are very specific, right? So look at adapting to the culture of the kingdom you're in and adjust your persona, adjust your garb, adjust your stuff to match that. Don't be restricted by, don't feel like you have to stick exactly to the book, right? If you got other ideas, I'd love to hear them. Send them to the Kal-bardr Corner page, post them on the page. You can toss them in the comments either on this video or wherever. I'd love to see what you guys have done with sort of the oddities, the weirdities, the ways you adapted your persona stuff. I'm not going to finish that coffee for the end of the show. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think that's something we can all work towards. So work on that for me. I'd appreciate that. Let me know what you've done. All right. Get some comments coming in. Yeah. Oh, yes. A great example from the SIFA. Cosplay. Make it period. So maybe you've seen pictures from Galop last year, 2 years ago. We did, Lazy and I did My Little Pony versions of, like, through 3 North and me as a Scythian. We're working on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're all going to be in turtles with the tippets and like, some sort of headbands based on the Ninja Turtles, and I'll be in a Master Splinter styled Scythian caftan. Right? No, our personas never would have done that. First of all, we'd never be together, but it's something silly and fun, right? I'm making a thing for Great Western War, or I say My wife is making a thing. I have chosen the fabric for it. That is like covered in spider webs, and they glow in the dark. But it's going to be shaped like a Scythian caftan that I would have worn, but not out of that fabric. Because it's fun. All right. A little bit of business. I only actually have one show to promote. We're in sort of a downswing right now with shows. So working on getting a couple. I've got a couple scheduled out, but I don't have the next Coffee with Cal scheduled. So if you've got an idea, if you've got a topic, if you have a rant out there and you'd like to join me here on the show, or just want to toss the subject my way, if you're not comfortable being on camera, I encourage you to, though. I think this is a great way to be on camera and not be as intimidated. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, I'd love to hear your opinions. Think of those things that really just grind your gears when you're sitting in the shower or driving home from an event. This is great post-event talk. So if you have that thing you saw that really just bugged you or you really liked, message me. I want to have you on air. I want to talk to you about that. I want to hear your passion. So please do that because I've got a couple slots to fill. I'd love to have you on. But coming up tomorrow, we have our second to last episode of A Look Inside Youth Activities, where her relationship as Gareth will be joined by the sibling pair of Ulrich and Rachel. They're the most honorable nobles. So that is at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Central tomorrow evening. And that'll be our second to last episode because we do have our last episode scheduled coming up next month. So looking forward to that. And we're already discussing the next steps for a Look Inside. So that is a Look Inside Youth Activities. So we'd like to do a Look Inside something else. If you have an idea for maybe a Look Inside, a Look Inside Bardic has already come up, and I think Izzy's going to pick that one up after the new year. But we want to have more people doing these shows. We want to branch out. So if you have a Look Inside Scribal Arts, a Look Inside SCA Combat, whatever, right? A Look Inside Creative Anachronisms would be a good one. We'd love to have you on. It is a great place to start, great place to, and they can be very much a short form. They don't have to be a long series. These, like Coffee with Cal, for me, is just a continuing series, but Look Inside, those sets have been intentionally limited, 6 to 8 episodes a piece. So we have the help, we have technology. We'd love to have you on, so please do that. Please look me up on the Kal-bardr Corner page. Push the buttons wherever you are doing where things are. And of course, if you want to sponsor or help support Kal-bardr Corner and KK Productions, everything we sponsor here, look us up on Patreon, patreon.com / Grand Wall of Patrons. Patreon.com / KK Productions, and join our Grand Wall of Patrons. You get some pretty sweet rewards from that. Just sent out the Q3 rewards. So Q4 will be going out October. So look those up. Also, you can look us up on Redbubble and search KK Productions, pick up some pretty sweet stickers. Or if you're really, really bored, look me up on TikTok at Kal-bardr. Oops, clear that banner. There we go. All right. Let's see. Stevie, but yes, Sophia made an entire outfit based on Snoop's Super Bowl bandana outfit, and that was amazing to me. So good job on that. And from Cyprian, thoughts on registering multiple devices. So quick point of order, you cannot register multiple devices, but you can register up to 10 pieces of heraldry. Only one of them can be your device. And device versus badge is the whole thing. But we do have a person here in Meridia's, Master Matthias, who does this exact thing, Cyprian. He has a device for Matthias, for Master Matthias Blackett, which is his primary persona. He also has a badge that is a Japanese mon that he uses for his Japanese persona, which has another name, but I can't remember. But it's a different heraldry he uses for that persona. So that is definitely an option. And I'd love to talk more about that. That may be a whole other topic. So that's a good topic idea. So there you go. All right, folks. I went 56 minutes, so I actually did pretty good. It is not an empty cup, but we're getting there. Go be merry, be creative, be anachronistic. Do not be restricted by your culture or time period. The SCA is a hobby and it is a role-playing activity. We're here to have fun. I think the creative anachronisms are ways we can do that. Try to be accurate, try to be period, try to look the part, but don't forget to have fun with it. Really, I think that's my my one If I could to sum this up in one word, have fun, or in two, I guess. So it's been my pleasure as always. I appreciate you all for tuning in today and every other week. Continue to support us here on these channels, and we'll keep pushing out shows for you. Look forward to Ask the Knights Live coming back next month with our show for Ask the Hosts. If you're going to be at Great Western War or Trimaris Coronation or Crystal Ball in 3 different kingdoms, please come see me. I'd love to have you. Meet me. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to. I'll usually have coins on me, so please come get one. I hand out little KK Productions coins for people who I get to meet at events. So please come talk to me. But until then, I've been Kal-bardr, and this has been Kal-bardr's Corner, and I love all of you. Have a great day, everybody.